We'll do in my Morim Melukit in volume 4, Chelik Dalet. This is the 21st Maimer. The Rebbe said this Maimer in Shabbos Parshas Eikef in the Chof Mנחem in the year h'tshkeg Gimel. And the Maimer begins with Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech Viyaכילך Samon. It says over here in the star that the published this Maimer in a Kuntrus Chof Mנחem in the year Tavshin Nun, and this was in honor of the upcoming day of Chof Menachem, of the day of the Histalkus Hilula, of the passing of the Kved Kedushas, Rav Agoin, Rav Achosid, Rav Kubel, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Zal, Nishmos Eid Nishneerson, the father of Yibod L'chaim Tovim of the Rebbe Shlita, and this is in the introduction of the Maimer. And the date over there is Vav Erev Shabbos Kodesh Eikev Yutas Menachem on Friday before Shabbos Kodesh Eikev, which is the 19th of Menachem Shnasei Tavshin Nun. So this was the Maimer that was published then. So we'll look inside the Maimer. Basically, in the Maimer, the references in the Pasuk in the Parsha is kind of discussing the Mon in a negative way. Always when the Torah discusses about the Mon, the Torah discusses the Mon in a positive, and here it's in a negative. The Rebbe will explain in the Maimer, while it says the Vi'ar'ivech, it's actually shows on a very high level of revelation, and that's why you remain hungry. It's like not being able to reach to the fullest extent. The various different interpretation, as we'll see, that here too, it's actually the Maila of the Mon. Let's look inside. Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech Viyaכילך Samon Gomer. So the pasuk over here says that the Eibishter afflicted you, and he kept you hungry, and he fed you the Mon. It seems like negative. We'll see why is it called that he made you hungry by afflicted. It was because there were several items that were missing by the Mon, which normally a people have by food, which in most cases then it's satisfied. Then they're satisfied with the food that they have. But by the Mon, it lacked some of the things that usually satisfy people. And that's why the pasuk says Vi'ar'ivech, as the Rebbe will explain, bring down in a minute in the Maimer. So, anyways, Medayik Admur Rashab. So the Rebbe Rashab asked the question. In the Maimer Dibur Hamaschil Zeh, that opens up with the same opening Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech Viyaכילך Samon. So he asks that the B'kol Mokim B'Torah, that in all places in the Torah, when the Torah Medaber B'Maila Samon, he talks about the advantage of the Mon. This is the Rebbe Rashab's Maimer in the Hemshech Tov Reish Ayin Beis, in the year Tov Reish Ayin Hey, but in that Hemshech. So always in the Torah, it talks about the advantage, the greatness of the Mon. But the Kan Oimer over here, the pasuk says, Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech. He afflicted you and he made you hungry. Goimer. That appears to be opposite of an advantage. This seems to be not talking about the Mon in a positive way. We also need to understand the Isa B'Gemara that we find in the Gemara in Brachas that Moshe tiken lahem Yisrael birchas hazon b'sho sheyored lahem Mon. That when the Mon came down in the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the first bracha. We have the three brachas of the benching till Bnei Yerushalayim. Then later on we have the fourth one, Hatoiv HaMeitiv. But the first three brachas, it says that the very first bracha, Moshe instituted when the Mon came down. And then the Gemara says that Yehoshua, he tikkun lahem birchas ha'aretz. He instituted for them the second bracha, al ha'aretz noida l'cha, al ha'aretz ha'tova. Kivon shenichnasu la'aretz, once they entered Eretz Yisrael, and they started eating the produce from the land, then he gave them the bracha of birchas ha'aretz. Because of Harashba, so the Rashba writes The Pirush Moshe Tiken Yeshua Tiken Chulu. What does it mean when we talk about they instituted? It doesn't mean the basis for brachas actually comes from the Torah. The exact language, the matbeya, the form, the way we do the bracha, that is instituted by Moshe and by Yeshua. Because of Rashba, the Rashba writes, the Pirush Moshe Tiken Chulu. What is the meaning that Moshe instituted or Yeshua taken as Yeshua instituted Chulu? Who shetiknu lahem matbeya habrachas. They instituted for them the coin, the form, the way the brachas are said. The brachas atzma, but the essence, the source that we have to make this brachas, hey min haTorah, that comes from the Torah, because the pasuk says, "K'diisa b'Gemara," as the Gemara says over there in brachas, that v'achalto v'savoto beirachto. So these are the three psukim, which is in our parsha, that it says you eat and you are satisfied, then you make a bracha. And the Gemara says, "Zubirchas hazon chulu." That is achalto v'savoto is the first bracha, and then it says ala oretz hatoivo, ala oretz zubirchas oretz. So the basis for making a bracha for zon and making the bracha ala oretz is based on the pasuk, because the Gemara learns it from the pasuk achalto v'savoto ve'rachto is azon ala oretz zubirchas oretz. The is so b'likutei Torah. So the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah brings down. So it would seem that in the Birchas HaOretz, we're also mentioning also the Mon over there, because in the Birchas HaOretz we're saying not just Al HaOretz, we're also saying Hamozin. The Birchas Hamozin is the Birchas Hamon. But even in the second bracha, as we're saying Al HaOretz, we're still mentioning the Birchas Hamon, Birchas Hazon. So the Alter Rebbe explains the Hatam. What is the reason? Al Shagam Birchas HaOretz. Also, when we're doing the second bracha Birchas HaOretz Maskirin, Balachilas Mozin, we also mention the eating of the Mozin, which is from the Mon. Ubachasimas bracha, and also in the end of the bracha, we also say Choismim Al HaOretz Vala Mozin. We say on the land and the Mozin. So we're also talking about the Mozin. Afal pi shebirchu kvar birchas hazon, but the birchas hazon, the mozin, is one who feeds us. We already made it, so why are we making again the bracha? Alter Rebbe explains that there's two separate zon. There is the zon of the mon, and there is the zon from the Eretz Yisrael. So in the first bracha, the Moshe Rabbeinu, that was for the zon of the mon, which was in the desert. But by Yeshua, the zon is from the Eretz Yisrael. So Alter Rebbe explains that Kanusach even though we already make the Birchas Hazon, who Kanusach v'hamadbeya the Birchas Hazon hu al Hamon, that the language and the form that we do for the Birchas Hazon, that is for the Mon. So that's one thing. That's the lechem min hashamayim. That's the bread min hashamayim. Umozin shebebirchas ha'oretz. When we say mozin over here in the second bracha in Noidelecho, who lechem min oretz, talking about different zon, talking about lechem min oretz. So b'tzarich biur. So this l'chayre requires explanation, because the birchas in the pasuk, like we said before, v'chalto v'savoto v'rachta is the birchas hazon, and so in the first bracha, the birchas hazon who al achilas hamazbes, when the pasuk says v'chalto v'savoto v'rachta, so that you mean the birchas hazon is when you eat something that satisfies you, as the pasuk says v'chalto v'savoto, and the issue is the achila hamazbas hi beikar b'lachem min oretz. Mostly, mainly, what is the food that satisfies you? We'll see. The mon didn't really satisfy, as we'll bring down from the Gemara. It's the vi'ar'ivech, vi'yanech didn't really satisfy. So the main satisfaction of food is mainly belechem min haaretz, is with bread that comes from the land. And still, habracha al hamozin belechem min haaretz, the bracha that we make al hamozin, the first bracha, the bracha that we make for the lechem min haaretz, for the main satisfying item, which is lechem min haaretz, he bebirchas haaretz. That is in the blessing of the Neidelecha, in the second bracha. And so over there it doesn't say v'chalta v'savoto. B'hanusach, but the language, the birchas hazon, the ksiba v'chalta v'savoto, but the language of the birchas hazon in which the pasuk says v'chalta v'savoto v'rachta, and we actually say that in the bracha, who al hamon the ksiba via'nech vi'ra'ivech. So over there, the satisfying food, which is the main satisfying, that is where on the lechem min haaretz is in the blessing for Neidelecha. But over there's no achalta v'savoto. And the birchas hazon, which it says v'chalta v'savoto alamon diksiba vi'ancha v'revecha. So how do we figure that the first bracha, which is supposed to be satisfying, that we say on the mon, which is not a satisfying food, and in the satisfying food, which is the al hamozin in birchas haaretz, as the Alter Rebbe explains, al hamozin over there in the birchas hazon, which is over there, it doesn't say v'chalta v'savoto. So chalta v'savoto is by the birchas hamon, and by the satisfying food, which is the mozim min haaretz with Neidelecha, over there's no chalta v'savoto. So how do we explain that? And as the Rebbe will explain later on, that dafke in the fact that in the birchas hazon that it was not masbia, that was the real masbia, as the Rebbe will explain at the end of the Maimer. So that's why v'chalta v'savoto is dafke in the level of mon, which is not fully masbia, as the Rebbe will explain. But let's go step by step. We'll go to further some more questions. And Gam Tzorich, the Rebbe is going to point all to this idea that this Yarivecho, making you starve, is not really a degradation. It's not really bringing down, but it's actually points to a higher level. Gam Tzorich Lahavin, also we need to understand Masheho Inui the Yom HaKippurim Lemeidim the Inui Hanemar Gabimon. So the fact that we learn out the Inui of Yom Kippur from the pasuk by Yom Kippur doesn't say specifically that you're not allowed to eat. It says v'nisem es nafshei seichem, that you should afflict yourself. What is the meaning of affliction? Doesn't say. So we learn it out in the Gemara. Inui hanemer gabimon, since there is an affliction, Inui, which is written with regards to the mon. And therefore, it is the same affliction by Yom Kippur. Ne'emar kan inui. Over here, by Yom Kippur, it says inui. V'nisim es nafshei seichem, should afflict yourself. Ne'emar lahalan inui. And over there, in the pasuk, by the in our parsha Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech, with regards to the mon, lahalan inui oven. Just like over there, what is the affliction? Is hunger. Via'nech Vi'ar'ivech. Afkan, the pasuk says Yinisem is the oven. So the tzarich biur that there's a different level. The Yom Kippur, there's no food at all. It's a complete oven. Over there, it didn't meet all the hunger that applied, as we learned from the Gemara, was it didn't meet the full usual satisfaction you have from food, because the mon was lacking that. But how could we say, compare this to the mon? And everybody's going to explain also that the level of not eating Yom Kippur is the same level as by the mon. Let's look inside. So we need to explain the mon. What is the affliction? What is the hunger of the mon? That the eating of the mon did not really fully satisfy them as necessary. Why? The Gemara gives different possibilities. Why? The person who has always the food ready in his basket is not hungry for food because he always has it. He knows, he expects it, it'll always be there. The manna came down every day. So the people weren't really hungry because they didn't, they had it always for them. And the mon was every day by day. So therefore, they were hungry because they didn't have to look forward for it, which would satisfy them. They always ate it, so they were hungry. Therefore, another reason why they were hungry. The Gemara says, if you eat your food and you don't see the food that you eat, let's say you're eating in the dark, it's not as tasty. It's still, if you don't see the food, you're not so satisfied. You're still a little bit hungry. And what is by the mon? What they would taste in the mon was all kinds, whatever they wanted to taste, they could taste in the mon, but they didn't see the mon. So they were not satisfied from those tasting whatever they had in mind, but they remained hungry. So what's the level of hungry? It's not fully satisfied. But the fact that we compare the affliction of the hunger of the month to the affliction of the hunger of Yom Kippur, mashma, it appears the month. So it appears that the affliction of the hunger of the month is it's not only that it didn't satisfy them, that it wasn't the normal. They were missing something, but it's like Yom Kippur. It's as if it didn't eat. So this seems like this didn't really fit the month, because you're saying the inu of Yom Kippur is you don't eat. And over here you're eating, but you're not fully satisfied. So we have to say that there is something even more in the month that it's actually considered as if you didn't eat at all. There's going to be a higher level, as the Rebbe will explain. And just to point out, we need to understand even more, since we're comparing it to the inu, to the oven. So how come the zon, the birchas hazon, is on something which not only didn't fully satisfy, but something which is compared to Yom Kippur, which is like not eating at all? Shanusach the birchas hazon hu alamon. When v'chalta v'savato is on, but here you're not even eating at all. It's more than just not having fully. Okay, so, and again, the Rebbe will explain the level of kimoishalei achal is actually the real zon. It really feeds you. I'll see at the end of the Maimer. Gam tzarich lahavin. Also, we need to understand nowadays the achre shedifsek amon. Now we don't have the mon, so the first bracha is not making on the mon. We're not eating the mon. So what are we doing? It kol habrachas the birchas hamazon heim l'chayir alach min haaretz. All of the brachas, originally birchas hamazon was instituted for the mon. But now that we don't have the mon, everything is alach min haaretz. And still the language of the Birchas Hazon, we still say the same language that Moshe did on the Mon. So, because in Pnimius Yonim, the Mon still works today as well, and that's the nusach of the bracha. Because we also, even though we don't have literally, there's no Mon min hashamayim, but the level in avoda, what the Mon accomplishes, we have today. That's why the bracha, we still say the brachas hazon, the same thing as it was instituted for the Mon. So, how do we understand this all? The Rebbe is going to bring out what is the real idea of the Vayarivecho. In addition to what we brought out in the Gemara before, what is the Vayarivecho? Rebbe will bring down that the Mon not only did not satisfy you, but it made you even hungrier. It made you hungrier for more. Via'nech Vayarivecho, the Mon kept on pushing you that you want more. Base Yuv and Zebahagdim will understand this by introducing the Isa b'Medrash. We find in the Medrash, Shamon Hoyo Michael Re'oven. The Mon was a food of hunger. What does it mean? A food that made hungry. Pirush Vayarivechel Gomer Esamon. What does it mean? He made you hungry and he fed you the Mon. It's not that he made you hungry and the Mon didn't satisfy you. He made you hungry by feeding you the Mon. The Vayarivecha goes on the Mon. Shahamon hirivoischo, the Mon made you hungry. What does it mean? The Mon made you hungry. Well, the idea is the Mon roimes la agoda. Mon is a hint for the agoda. It's like the expounding and the stories of the Torah that draw a person. So when you eat a little bit, you get hungrier because you want more. The Mon roimes la agoda. Mon is a hint for the agoda, expounding part of Torah. Pasuk says, "Who's kzera God, like seed of God, agoda, God, love him." Isa b'mechilta, the Mechilta said that means a ka'agoda shemesheches libe shel odom. It's like the agoda which draws the heart of the person. Shu pnimius ha'Torah. Pnimius ha'Torah is considered something that pulls the person's heart. He wants more. That's the zeragad, the agoda from the Mon. Pnimius ha'Torah. As explained in many places, the lechem min ha'oretz, food from the ground, who gal you the Torah. That's the revealed part of Torah. The lechem min hashamayim, and the bread from heaven, Mon, who pnimius ha'Torah, is the inner part of Torah. And when you learn v'kivon shebepnimius ha'Torah hu rak yidiyas ha'metzias v'lo yasogas ha'mehus, since in the inner part of Torah, we only know the Pneumis HaTorah, we only know the facts, the Metzias, but we don't know the essence of Torah. We don't really get it. L'chein, halimud the Pneumis HaTorah kosher b'le'ovin. That's why learning Pneumis HaTorah is tied to hunger, because you're learning and you don't really get it. It's above. There's beyond your grasp. As we say in the pasuk, you're thirsty because you want to know more, because you're not getting it. Because you want to get and grasp the mahus. So when we say that it's hunger, it's like something that causes you. You're learning something that pushes you or draws you to more, to want to be. It makes you hungry to want to do more. The Rebbe said this is the difference between Pnimius HaTorah and Galia the Torah, the inner Torah and the revealed part of Torah. However, if you go deeper in Pnimius HaTorah itself, there is two levels. There is something which is you can understand, and something which you just know. Let's look inside. To say this little deeper, we can say the Masha Kosev Medrash Shaman Machal Rovim. When the Medrash says that the mon was a food that makes you hungry, Hakavona Bazehi, what it means is loy rak shahamon poyel einoi, that the mon inflects that einoi shoylel ra'ovin ba'odam ha'ichloi, that it does not negate hunger by the person that eats it, because when you are learning, you don't have enough. You want, it doesn't take away the hunger because you don't know the mahus as we learned before. But it's more than that. Elagam shamon atzmei hu meichel re'ovin. It's a kind of a food that is a hunger food. It's a food of hunger. What does it mean? You and Zebahag will understand it by introducing Shabir Hanal the Lechem min Ha'oretz. Ugalia the Torah, the explanation that Lechem in Ha'oretz is the revealed part of Torah. But Lechem in Hashemayim U'Pnimis HaTorah, the Lechem in Hashemayim is the inner Torah. U'Bechlos. That's in a general way. Abu Beprotius, but specifically Shnei Yonim Elu, Lechem in Ha'oretz, Lechem in Hashemayim. These two aspects in bread, the bread from the ground, the bread from the heavens. It's also in the inner part of Torah itself. And the idea is the Isa Betanya. It says in Tanya that when we learn the inner parts of Torah, there's two aspects to it. First of all, mitzvah Rama. It's a great, elevated mitzvah to learn Pnimis HaTorah. Rama v'Nisa. Great and elevated study in of itself. Number two, it brings you to a complete heart. It changes your heart, it makes your heart complete. So these are the two aspects. Learning is great, Pnimis HaTorah in of itself, that's the Torah itself, and also it accomplishes, that brings the Lev Shalom. So the Rebbe says these are two parts. We can say, Shalimud de Pnimis HaTorah lefi shemevi lev Shalom. The part that we learn, the inner part of Torah, because it brings you to a complete heart. Since that applies, that's connected to the idea of sorting out birur hamidus. So that's similar to bread from the ground. It's connected to the person, to the primis, to his heart. But the main limud of the main study, main idea of Lechem Shemayim, is just learning and knowing the inner parts of Torah for themselves, not because they lead you to a Lev Shalom. So you have the learning of Torah that helps you mevarer the midas, that's lechem in oretz, and you have the Torah, which is just a mitzvah rama v'niso of knowing Pnimis Torah by itself. So yesh loymar that there's also a different level in the intellect that you apply to the learning Pnimis Torah in order to be mevarer the midas, and a different level of the intellect which you apply just for learning the Pnimis HaTorah itself. Yesh loymar she'achiluk d'shnei efanei halimud, that the distinction, the difference between the two types of study, ugam b'dargas haseichel, it also impacts the level of seichel. The limud v'hayidiyah d'Pnimis HaTorah, the learning and the knowledge of the inner part of Torah, in order to reach the level of a complete heart. That's in the level of the intellect of that has a connection to the emotions. But learning and the knowledge of not for the midas, but on its own, that's in the level of the intellect, which is higher than midas. Can I explain what does it mean when we say shaman hu meichel rov? It's a hungry kind of food. Mon is hungry food. Not only that it doesn't make you satisfied, but it's a hungry food. We're talking about in the intellect. What is called satisfying that is satisfy you? When you grasp and you understand the intellect, the idea, that means you're satisfied. When there is a knowledge and a grasp of the moichin which are connected to the midas, lechem min haaretz, the lechem min haaretz which is near Torah, shehi nitfases b'seichel ha'odem b'asogot tfisa mamish. That is caught up in the intellect of the person, actually grasps it. That level of understanding, that level of seichel is something which comes to the person in a way that he's able to comprehend it fully, because that's why that's why this hasoga can impact also your midas. It's a food that's satisfied. But but when we talk about the knowledge and grasping of the moichin, which is higher than midas, lechem en hashemayim, mon, that's in a way that it's wondrous. It is not grasped so much in the intellect of the person. He Michael Rav, that's called the food of hunger. The whole level of this moichin that's higher than midas is not something which you grasp. It's a hunger kind of an idea. The idea that comes down and you fully grasp, that's the lechem in haaretz, that impacts the midas. But a hungry kind of a food is when the learning is according to the higher level, which you don't really grasp it. It's a hungry kind, non-graspable kind of idea that you're learning. So in Ois Gimel, the Rebbe continues to explain that this difference of learning Pnimis HaTorah, and it doesn't satisfy you because you want more, because you only know the Mitzias, you don't know the Mehus, on the one hand. And on the second level, that we are saying that the whole learning is a learning which is above one's head, it's higher than Tfisa. That's the difference between the meaning of Michael Re'oven is the two levels in Seichel, whether it's the Seichel which is connected to Midos, or it's the Seichel which is even higher than Midos. Gimel. The difference between these two interpretations. What is Michael Re'oven? One, as we learned, that this impacts when you eat that food, the mana food, it impacts that it doesn't negate the person is still hungry. But the second interpretation, that the food itself is a hunger kind of a food, it's beyond grasp. who lefishu l'mayla mahasoga shaloi. So this knowledge that it causes the hunger to the person is because it's higher than his grasp, but it's because it's be'etzim higher from his grasp. But the reason that he's hungry because it's a kind of a knowledge is because it's higher. So one thing impacts the person that it doesn't take away from the hunger, because the person still remains hungry because he only knows the mitzvahs, not the mahus. The other thing is that it's a hunger that's higher than grasp, which he also knows that he can't grasp it. That's why he's hungry. So the difference is that knowledge that it is not, it doesn't take away the hunger. It's because it's in the level of the seichel, which is compared. It's in the realm. It's be'erech of the midas, but it's higher than them. And therefore, so therefore, the impact on the person is midas, it impacts him. He wants to thirst and hunger to know the idea, because it's a graspable, it's higher than them, but it's still graspable. So it causes you to hunger, to thirst to know the. But v'hayidiyah shehi atzma l'chinas ravin. But the knowledge that the it itself is a level of hunger. He bedargas haseichel shelamayla midas. That's in the level of seichel which is higher than midas. Kinal si base. Shalachain he bechinas ravin be'etzem lagabe hamidas. So therefore, it's a hunger in essence relative to the midas. This is a hungry kind because it's a non-graspable. It's in a higher level than the midas. And what happens? When this higher level, which is in essence higher than midas, when it's revealed, they become in subjugation. This would be similar to the impact of the difference between chokhmah and bina. When you grasp of bina, kasher ha'izbonenus, v'hasoga hi b'haflo de'edin sof shelamaylam oilamis, when the meditation, reflection, and the grasp is on the ein sof, how removed, great, which is higher than world, ubali de avarabba b'tshuka v'tzimoin. So that leads him to this great love with the yearning and a thirst. He becomes yesh mi she'oyev, an entity, somebody who loves, that increases his mitzias, that he enjoys, that he grasps it. Not bittul, but an entity. But when it comes from chokhmah, by yidei hariyah de chokhmah, but through the vision of chokhmah, bali yira, it comes to fear bittul, subjugation. So, if it brings the bittul, so why would we call this then a food of hunger? It's hunger. Hunger is not a food. It doesn't give metal elosha avo pike. But yet the Rebbe says gam dar gezu demon, even this level of mon, which is haflo, which is higher, nikra b'shem ma'achal re'ovim, we still would call this a food of hunger, because once that is nisgala to the person, because the refinement that takes place through the eating of the mon is that the person who eats the mon becomes totally subjugated. That makes him into a vessel to receive an energy from such a light which is higher than him. So it's still a food, and it feeds him it feeds the person because that food which is higher makes him into a vessel to be able to receive an energy from a light which is totally not in his comparison, not in his level. So therefore that feeds him because that allows for that oil which is higher uh, and makes him into a kedim. And this would be similar to that we say the with regards to Yom Kippur, we vitalize them in hunger, the Yom Kippur. What does it mean? How does Rav vitalize you? Here we're saying also that it's a muzzin. On Yom Kippur, when you don't eat, Sha'arav, the Yom HaKippurim, u'bechinas tainug atzmi habiltim murgash. The hunger of Yom Kippur is a level of tainug, of the essence which is not felt, shalamayla machilu shtiyah, which is higher. Eating and drinking causes a person pleasure, but the pleasure you get from not eating is a greater, it's a higher, it's an essence tainug, which is not felt, that you're not felt, and it's at a higher level than the tainug that you get from eating and drinking. As it's known, why aren't you allowed to eat or drink? Because then there is a revelation of an essence timing that is not felt. That doesn't allow you. You can't eat them. But it means, what does it mean? They get the vitality through the hunger, through the not eating. That on Yom Kippur you get the chayis from that tainug, which is higher than the level of achilosh. So when the person eats the mun, which is higher than of the grasp, or we're talking about the seichel, the grasp of the person, that's getting vitality for something which is above his level. He gets from a higher light, just like getting on Yom Kippur from a higher level of time. Now, Yesh Lekasher Zeh. So the Rebbe says we can tie this in Maimer HaZoyar al Posik Ru'u Kavaye Noson Lochem HaShabbos. So it says in the Zoyar on the verse when they were collecting on Shabbos, they weren't supposed to demon. Says, see, Hashem gave you the Shabbos. So Rabbi Chizkiah Posach says in the Zoyar, Rabbi Chizkiah opened up when he to interpret these words. He said, Shir Hamailos Mimamakim Goimer. That the song on the step, Mimamakim, is from the depths. Mimamakim, that Shabbos comes from the deepest of the level. The Me'amakim Loshen Rabim, it says depth is Heim Oimkod de Koila, the Oimkod de Bira, the depth of everything, which will be interpreted to the depth of Chokhmah, and Umkod de Bira, the depth of the palace, which is level of Bina, Harchorecheves Hanor, the depth of the Bira. So these are the depth of Chokhmah. Hashem gave you Shabbos. Because of A'amur, so my father, Adoni Yovi Meiri Rabbi, the Rebbe is the Yortzeit, Bala Ha'ilula, the ones whose Yortzeit, Al Hagilin Shel Sefer HaZoyer Shaloi, on the sidebars on the Zoyer that he had. So Meshach Kama Shonim Hoya B'Shivya, for many years it was in captivity. And lately Nivdu, they were redeemed. Sefer HaZoyer Shaloi, the Sefer HaZoyer in Moitz Svarim Shaloi with other his Svarim. Ma'ashivya, from captivity, Vigiu Lekan, and they arrived to the Rebbe in New York. So what does the Rebbe write over there, the Rebbe's father write over there on the note, on the sidebar of the Zohar? What's the connection of this interpretation, Mamakim, that it comes from the depth of Kula and Bira? What is the connection to the word Shabbos? So the Rebbe's father of Levik explains, Umkod de Koila, Umkod de Bira, Hem chokhmah ubina. The depth of koilo and the depth of bina is the level of chokhmah bina. Shebehem nimshach, from them extends hashefa l'chol shisha hamidas de zah, to all of the 6 emotions from zah, from chokhmah bina extends a flow to the 6 midas of zah, of the zeir ampin. As it says, mabuin nafkin benagdin lebracha kula. There is wells that come out and they pull blessings for everything, flow of the blessing to all of them. The inyan zem, and this idea, shayich l're'u ka'avayim nosem l'cham haShabbos. That has a connection to Ruach Gavayim nosem l'cham haShabbos. Ki Shabbos hu yom shvi'o shuhu bino. Shabbos is the 7th. You have the 6th midos, and the 7th is the bina, the level of bina. That is umko de bina, the depth of the bina of bina. Shaba in bina malubash chokhma umko de koilo. That is dressed up umko de koilo. Uminei, and from Shabbos, from bina, which has chokhma in it, mizborchim shiti yoyim, the 6 days, the vav ktsav is the zah, the 6 corners of zah, the chesed gvura tifer is the 7 days of the 6 days of the week, and they get from Shabbos, which is bina and chokhmah. Mamshech bal ha'ilula. So the bal ha'ilula continues. The zeu mashakosu v'karoso la Shabbos oinek. This is what we say. Shabbos you call oinek. The word oinek, the light, is oinek uroshotevis. Eden, Nohor, and Gan. Eden is chokhmah, Nohor is bina, and Gan is the midos. Eden v'nohor heim chokhmah, or in this case malchus. Eden v'nohor heim chokhmah bina, emko de kula v'emko de bira, umehem nimshach hashefa v'abrocha legan, and they come to the gan to malchus. And the Rebbe will explain, because it starts off with saying that from chokhmah bina comes to the vav ktsavis, to the midos. And here, all of a sudden, we're saying the inyan of oineg, that you comes to the level of gan. Gan is the level of malchus. But first of all, what's the connection between Shabbos and the gan over here? Malchus nikras Shabbos. We're saying that because la Shabbos means we're calling malchus oineg, that it gets the Eden and the Nor into the Gan. Malchus nikras Shabbos. Ki Shabbos hu oisius shin bas. Bas is the daughter. So the shin is bigamatria mamaki. That's the numerical value 300. And it's Shabbos, the 300, which is, as we said before, Emke de Bira, Emke de Kula, who Eden V'Nohor. That's the Chochma Bina. Ubas, he Malchus. It's called Abba Yosef Barata, the daughter is Malchus. Gan, Shabon Nimshach HaShefach V'Abrocha. In the Gan, in the Bas, in the Malchus, extends the flow and the blessing Eden V'Nohor from the Chochma Bina from Eden V'Nohor, Ma'amaki V'Ma'amaki. But how did we switch from the Vav Ktsoves to Malchus? We need to understand the Betchilos HaInyan Medaber Ba'amshochas HaShefa Mechochma Ubina Ma'amakim. He talks about bringing the flow from Chochma Ubina with Amakim, the Shisha Amidas de Zoh, to the 6 midas of the Zeir Ampim. And then later on he explains that then we're saying that it comes to the God. So we can say the explanation in the service of man, Shema'amakim lo rabim hem shnei minyonim hanal. That these mamakim in the plural are the two ideas that we said before, Michael Ra'ovin, which is the Vi'ar'ivech in the food of hunger. Is Onkod the bira, the depth of the bira bina, who hayidio shepelos Ra'ovin. That's the knowledge that causes impacts. You want to know more. Onkod the kula chokma, and the depth of all, which is chokma hayidio she'rovin be'etzim l'gabe odom. That's the knowledge that is something which is hunger in essence, relative to the point you can't even grasp, it's beyond. The Zoh Malchus, and these two aspects of Zoh Malchus, we were talking before where it comes down. Those are two levels in the intellect of the person, as he is a little bit separated, undressed from his essence, which is Zoh, and as he is in his limitation in Malchus. So, the bring down from a makim in the human intellect, through the person's bittul, it comes down to both levels. Also in his limitation, which is the malchus, which in essence they are higher than seichel, come down actually in seichel and sogam mamish, comes down in his akbolos, also to malchus. Come down in a little bit. Zoh means that the seichel, as it's doesn't fully grasp it, and as it comes down in the hagbolos, in the understanding. So we can add actually the main depth comes down the dafke malchus. The vav midas the Zoh himrak misbarchim b'yom hashviyah. 6 midas of Zoh, they're blessed from the 7th day. Malchus, but Malchus, noisef al shabon nimshach hashefa mechochma bina. In addition to that, in it applies the flow of chochma bina. He atzma nikras Shabbos. That itself, Malchus is Shabbos itself, meaning it's more connected to Shabbos than the Zoh is connected to Shabbos. Seder Zoh. So it comes out, Shabbos is Chochmah Bina, but it's also the level of Malchus. We say to Mizu, Shabbos, Shekoyi, Be'ikir al Bina, that in Shabbos, which is the Gila mainly goes, Ambina Yesh Gam Oisius Bas. It's Shin Bas, we have the Bas. Haini Iker Inyan Hashim, the Mamamakim. Because we said the Shabbos is Shin Bas to 300. Hukishu Nimshach, the Bas is when it comes down in the Bas in Malchus. Yesh Loimer, Abir Bazeba Avodas Odom. So we can say the explanation in the service of man, Shal Derech HaYadua, similar to what is known, Shal Yidei HaFotzas HaMayonos Chutza, that through spreading the wellspring to the outside, Mizgale in Yonim the Mayonis is revealed the ideas of these wellsprings. So the Rebbe is going to continue to follow this idea that we say that on one hand, it is beyond the person's grasp, pnimius hatoira, or the level of seichel, which is higher than midos, and yet it feeds the person. And the Rebbe explained it brings the level of bittul to the person. The Rebbe is going to say that also impacted the mon on the physical level. While the mon was higher than his shtalshlus, it was beyond, but yet it was a food of Re'ovin. In other words, it fed because they tapped into the level of higher than Ishtalshlus. And but they were fed. They were fed by this great light. It's a Michael Rav. Let's look inside. These two aspects that we talked about before, that's in the mon of Pnimis HaTorah. We have, on one hand, you have the oven, it's a hunger, it's beyond. So that's hunger because you can't grasp it. Of the apple became, so why, but it's still a food. Why is it a food? It's a food because the level of bittul, that makes it a keli. So from that two aspects, nishtalshlu, shnei inyonim elu ba'amon kipshute. So these two ideas, it's a food, and yet it's oven, it's higher. What's the idea? The hatam al zeh shaman hoya dvar yom b'yom. What was the reason that the mon came down every single day? And that's the reason, because it came down every single day, so there was nothing to look forward to that made them hungry. The Gemara says, Via'nch Vi'ar'ivech. He afflicted you and he made you hungry. Because since it had to come down every day, it's not the same. One who always has his bread in his basket knows that it's coming. He's not as hungry, he's not as satisfied to one who doesn't know where he's going to get the next meal from. So the meal is more satisfying. So why did the mon come down every day? The definition of world is its time and space. Space and time. Mon, and the definition of the mon, who l'mayla me'olam, is higher than world, which means l'mayla me'geder zman. It is beyond time. So therefore, in order, even after it was extended into the world, it needed to be renewed every day, because the world did not coincide with the mon, which was higher than Zman, so you needed to push it down into B'machadish every day. And this is the meaning, and this is the inner meaning of Ein Adoime Mishiyesh Pas B'Salo. It's not the same one whose bread in his basket, which means that it doesn't have to be recreated all the time. The one who doesn't have, it's a kind of a bread, a kind of a mon, a food that has to be renewed every day. The lechem mina oretz, the bread that comes from the ground. V'chein kol hashpos shenimshechu ba'olam, also all the flows that have been extended, drawn down into the world. Kivon she'ein nikor bahem she'im mischachim b'chol yom. You can't tell that there. It looks like the bread stays on the shelf from the day before. You don't have to renew it. The wheat, everything is there. So nitna la'odam, so the person she'em b'sali, that it's in his basket, he has it. But b'hamon, when it comes to the mon, show your nikr boy begilui. Over there, you can tell openly she'em mischadish b'chol yom milmaylo, that every day it's renewed, comes down anew, because it's not in the gather of the world. Nidma. That's not in his basket, because it's not really there. It's higher than the person. Same thing was the same other reason. That they tasted in the mon, the taste, all tastes. Which is the second reason for the hunger of the mon, because they could not see. They tasted it, but they couldn't see the food that they were tasting. The bedover mugbali efsher sheyiyeh by kol hatayim, in items, in a matter which is limited. Regular food can have all the tastes over there, because it's limited to what it is. Especially within taste, sometimes there's contradictory, opposite tastes. So in a limited thing, you can't have all tastes. Kol haTaimim. How did the mon have all the tastes? Is lefishagam kshenimshach lemata hoyelachem min hashamayim. Because even as it extended, it came down below, it still remained the bread of the heavens. Inyan eliki shelamayla mehahagbolis da'olam. It was a godly matter which is higher than the limitation of the world. What this means, he didn't see and eat it. The eye, limited eye of a human being, was not able to capture the unlimited of the mon. So even if it was a simple food, he didn't see it because it was an unlimited. One was an unlimited. Al-derech, similar to mokoim or godel minasoy, if you have a place which is such light that you can't tolerate, shariyim is balbelas, then the seeing gets confused, so you couldn't see anything. So that's the idea that it is higher than the mon is higher than the world. It's higher than the hasoga. These two reasons, as we explained. So how is the food become the mon of food for the? This is explaining to us that it's beyond it. When does it become a meichel of food for the hungry one? That is when the person of Metzias, that's when it remains a Ravin. So when the person is a Metzias, so then that remains Ravin, there remains a hunger that he can't tap into it because he's a Mugbal. And if he's a Mugbal, how's he going to get the Bligbal? As opposed to when he is subjugated, bottled to godliness. So where is his main pleasure? Which his main delight is from the flow that he feels, that it's not the basket, it's not your basket. And that becomes actually a hashpah. By their bittul shaloi, through the bittul kli lekabel hashefa v'bilti mugbal, then he becomes a vessel to receive the flow which is unlimited, to see and need. So normally loira ain't a but if you are bittul b'mitzias, that feeds you, like it's the Michael Robin, it becomes a keli to the shefa bilti mugbal and then royavech. Both. So in the language of Hazon, we say but we said it didn't satisfy. Hu al hamon is the mon ki amitis inyan hasoiva v'hashirus. The true matter aspect of satisfying in wealth ubemon. The monk shemargish hashefa shenoistim loy eine besalei the ha'odam, when he feels that it's not in his basket, you don't own it. Elu nimshach tamid b'lamayla, but it is constantly given to you, a flow from above. Ki hamon shehaya nikar by begilui shemischadish b'chol yom, like the mon that was recognizable that you renewed every day. This is also the explanation for the today Bisman Hazeh. We still, because that's still in Avedis Hashem, we're still having the mon to have the level of bittul to receive from the level of Re'oven to be nurtured by it, to be zon. That's the greatest level. It is in the possibility of each and one of the Yidden to come to this feeling. Especially based on what is known. about the parnosa that we get nowadays, parnosa bisman hazeh bisman hagolus, that when we get our livelihood nowadays in time of exile, someone, it's like the flow of the month. Through that feeling, it becomes a vessel to receive the unlimited flow, which is the month. As our sages of the best memory say, an empty vessel can hold, a full vessel cannot hold. When the person holds himself as an entity, especially he thinks that it's in my basket, then he doesn't hold afilu hashefa betzutzim delechem min haaretz. He doesn't even hold that limited, contracted flow of lechem min haaretz. But through being a kli reikav, the bittul he can hold on also to the satisfaction and the wealth of the month. And all the flow is extended to him. Of children, life, and food in a way of a wife.